what type of tips do you have for building that relationship that goes beyond just professional? Because you do a really good job at this. I've witnessed it firsthand.
Well, I appreciate that, man. Listen, it comes back to maybe a leadership principle I was taught decades ago, which is like actually give a shit, right? Like actually care, right? Sometimes it's like this basic thing that we overlook, right? Is like we just, again, this is why I think a high percentage of leaders are, failing, is because they don't take the time to actually care, like come from a place of authenticity, of being empathetic, being kind, trying to understand what that person's going through the lens of these Zoom frames that we're all sitting in front of most of our days, right? Like that's what it takes, right? Like one of the things you mentioned earlier, and being a student of the game of sales, I'd say this, and you've seen this as my right-hand guy, Zach, is that like most companies suck at enablement. Most. They suck at training new staff, right? We just expect that like, they come on, and because they're skilled, like we can just throw them into the deep end and they're going to be successful. And then, a year later, we're all looking at each other like, hey, how come they're not performing? We got to fire them. That's when the rifts start coming, right? Like it's just a terrible cycle, right? And one of the things that I was thinking about as you were speaking last is that teams were horrible at enabling and onboarding new people far before we went remote and hybrid, right?
Exactly.
Like that was happening for eons. And so I think it's just been exasperated. Like it's been now like there's a big light that shines on it because we're hybrid and remote. And I think those poor leaders now, their takeaway is that hybrid and remote's not working, when in fact they just didn't have frameworks and processes and the right people in place to actually care to make training and onboarding and engagement an effective process.